bulb keeps going. So, thank you for coming to see one artist talk about her work. And thank you. That means something to me. And one reason I wanted to do this is that having just moved here and wondering who am I as an artist in DC, and how do I get settled, and just who am I as an artist? I thought, what better way than to come over to Guy Mason and make a presentation. And it helps me remember what I'm doing, what I'm about. But I think the concept it might be of interest to you too. It's a concept that I've kind of grabbed, and I call it a galvanized moment. And this galvanized moment is actually in this painting. And I'm going to give you examples of what that is in other artworks as well. So it's a moment when two or more forces or components converge in a startling juncture. Now, I didn't see this moment in a landscape. What happened was that I saw several things at different times, and then in thinking about them or reflecting upon them, I imagined them all together galvanized into one picture. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So these are photographs I took of a frozen puddle, an old tree, roots of a tree, and a bird. So these were moments that I just saw while wandering, while walking. And there was a time much later, maybe even a year later, where all of them came together as an option for a picture, which is what we were looking at here. So those same elements are galvanized in this picture. And I want to explore that again. So here's another example, going backwards. This is something I saw. These stairs were remarkable. For me, they were remarkable. The stairs were left, the building is gone, and what's behind it is just an empty lot. And I found that remarkable. So I photographed it, and I just kept the photograph. And below it is a photograph of walking in the woods. And there was something remarkable about that walk in the woods, especially at that spot. Hello, come on in. Hi. I don't know if you ever have the experience of being in nature and you feel like, this is an unusual spot. There's something going on here. Or you feel your hair, the hair on your arms stands on end. It was a little bit like that. And I just paused, and I decided to take a photograph before I walked. And again, I came back to it. I came back to it later, and the stairs and that exact place in the woods are now galvanized in a painting. So the mystery that I experienced in the woods is expressed here and even in the presence of the stairs and the wispy smoke that you see on the stairs. So this is another galvanized moment. I'm showing you a few more examples of this. This is actually a photograph. I was walking in the woods, and when I turned around, another startling moment of seeing the vertical trees, but there on the ground are the long shadows of another section of trees to the right. And the shadows are defining the waves in the ground. And I decided I was so captured by what I saw that I thought, what would it be like to paint this? So I just started painting the waves, and I painted the vertical brush strokes to start, wanting to be authentic or true to what was there, and then the painting developed into something simple, but this is it. And I finally, in the end, ended up adding, these are fabric pieces from an old silk tie, so they've been added in as well. And another one that was described. This is, for me, was a galvanized moment where this small tree is cast as a shadow onto a larger tree. And I started to paint it. It's really not finished, but again, it's another moment. As an artist, how these experiences impress. And here I'm showing you a little film. I decided to bring this in because for me, this is an example of the purest moment of a galvanized moment. When I didn't plan this, I had to be there to witness it. I came into the woods with a notebook. I was going to take notes, write, journal, and I put the book down. And then I looked and I just simply watched this happening. So wind and sun and shadow and an open notebook are coming together, converging into what now is a short film. And there was nothing more to do with it other than to witness it and record it. So the creativity that I express myself through is often through something I've witnessed or seen that is unusual. So this is, for me, a very pure form of a galvanized moment. It's unplanned, serendipitous. It can't be forced, it just is. And these are the things that I find most interesting. Now I'm going to move on a little bit to something I told Lila. I'm more of a conceptual artist. I work with concepts oftentimes, and those concepts can come from what's going on in the world. And I had been reading articles. I was living in Thailand, and I had been reading articles about what was going on in America on the West Coast. There were lots of mudslides. We had already started into this climate change world we live in. So there was more rain, more catastrophes, more typhoons, more earthquakes. And I was reading this in articles in different parts of the world. So I was so emotionally moved by this, especially the articles I read about mudslides where whole villages or towns they just disappear and everybody in it. But what's left are maybe some of the belongings that belong to the loved ones. So I did a whole series on flotsam and jetsam. And flotsam and jetsam is actually what's left in the ocean, floating in the ocean after a shipwreck. That's where the term comes from. So I began to collect objects and items, and a purse, a shoe, and I made a series of artworks in which only the objects speak about the person who is no longer present. So I was in a way talking about the people who are lost, but I'm actually focusing only on the remains, which are the objects. And here's an example of, so there's a bra, and there's a sleeve, and there's a cigarette pack. What was interesting for me as an artist too was not only to read about it, but to look at the pictures the journalists were putting in the newspapers of people holding these objects. Like, this is all that's left of my brother, and just holding up a shirt. And I found all of this so moving that it was not something I could forget about. It was something I wanted to play with. So here's another example. The one on the bottom is dark. It's hard to see, but this is a book in black ash mud. Could be from a volcano, with other pieces of nature around it. And a shirt. And at one point, many shoes were put together into a column, like a tower of shoes. It was so this was a sculpture, and all the pieces, there were other pieces, they were all shown together in a series. staying with the idea of some concepts, we are all sometimes affected by political ideologies and movements and things happening around us, which we are right now. And I was having a little trouble with democracy and how democracy behaves in different parts of the world, even in America. I did this while living abroad. And so there's an irony in this one, where yes, we love democracy, democracy loves us. Well, maybe that's not always true. And one way that I'm questioning democracy and how much we are loved is that there's a photograph. It's actually a picture that's taken from a World War II film. So these are German soldiers surrendering. So I put in this element of surrender just to throw the question out there. How much does democracy love me, or the other guy, or those people over there? So this is a piece where I kind of launched myself into wanting to have a dialogue through art about my political questions. And here's another one. Politician for the poor. And some of these things just come together quickly. They're not all planned out. There are images that I might have around me, and I see how they can come together to express something very specific. Although the images themselves, the parts, don't necessarily fit together. So it's the job of the artist to put things together in order to communicate. And maybe not in a linear way, or not in a conventional way. So my work has a tendency to communicate this way and is created this way. So the same piece that image is also mounted in a frame that is copper and gold and diamonds and glass, which is a form of irony in itself. A different form of politics, girl bone, the politics of gender, and the questions that come up with gender identity and who's who and who should not be as they identify themselves. So the question of gender, but when does bone have a gender, which is why I chose the bone. And everybody's got a femur, everybody's got a femur, but in this case I decided to use the femur as the object of identity. Some of the title is a little hard to read, Altar of Promise. This is very large mixed media painting. So there are objects on the front of this altar, this pedestal. And what's coming out of the pedestal is a long receipt. And on it, before every section of record of purchases, it says promise. So it's just the promise that if you do this or that, if you follow the rules, if you spend your money, if you play the game right, there's some kind of hidden promise that you'll be okay, you'll be loved, or you'll have what you need, you'll be okay. So it's that promise that was bothering me, especially in the economy, and how seductive it is in advertising. So I made my own expression of that. So this is, in a way, this is my political expression. And this was around I think it was the end of the Iraq War when I did this one. And this is a little figurine sculpture. Again, there's irony in this. Like who do we give the power to? Who do we trust? And in this case, one comes out of the other, and they're very, very different. So it's a little icon. This one is very hard to see, but it says love and lunacy is written throughout the whole painting, and the upside down camel. All of these working together for me to speak about the contradictions in, I was living in Abu Dhabi, I was living in the United Arab Emirates, a Muslim nation, and teaching in the school there. I had heard and seen far too many things having to do with corruption, corrupt use of workers and not taking care of them. And the whole city was built by Indians and Pakistanis, and many of those workers were not well cared for. So I found the whole thing, it was just lunacy that this city that was so wealthy and so magnificent and had grown up over 50 years so quickly had this hidden underbelly of negligence and misuse, human misuse. So that's why we have an upside down camel. And that's why the heart is broken, in fact cut. And that's why the word love and lunacy is just written throughout the whole piece. This is just a personal one. I won't even talk about it. But it did require opening up something and looking at the inside of this pig, which was a mechanical pig, and then severing the pig and completing the pig on my own as in the black area. Again, there's actually, I don't know where adoration of the devil's ass actually exists as an etching somewhere. But I'm playing with the concept of adoration, or falsely believing in the power of something. Especially, it's not just one person, it's actually a group, and how easy it is to be misled. This one is called Mink Posing as a Paramecium. So I'm a mixed media artist, so I'm playing with mixing materials that don't belong together, especially that don't belong together. So in this case, it was a piece of a mink pelt, and as I took apart a mink coat and removed the lining, I noticed that, which you can't really see here very well, but the inside of a mink coat, there's many, many lines here. The whole mink coat is sewn together by hand. The pelt is stripped, all the pieces are sewn together. You don't know that. From the outside, it looks like it's one fur. The inside was so beautiful and so organic. So I decided to bring it back to life, and I made it into a one-celled paramecium, a one-celled animal. So I painted this paramecium onto the inside of the pelt, keeping the fur showing. So there's still a mink there, and then there's the new life of the paramecium. And it's rather large, it's a little smaller than that, but it's quite beautiful. And there's a whole series here called Tools for an Imaginary Society. There were about 5 or 6 sculptures made in this series, and this is showing you 2 of them. Again, making combinations and inventing realities by making combinations that you won't see walking down the street, and you won't see when you're shopping at the furniture store. Again, combinations of describing an event, clearly a medical event, with other forces going on around it that are influencing the event. And this little black box at the bottom is actually an area of hope, a wish that if all goes well, if the crow puts the diamond through the gear hole, I'll be able to ride a bicycle. So this is actually a story about making it through a medical surgery and coming out the other side well and being able to get back on my bicycle. So there's a story here.
I have a question.
Yes.
The person looking at that or some others or other kinds of art, I asked myself, how is somebody going to interpret it? And how many people would interpret that in the way you just expressed it? And once you say the words, I can see all of that. And then they say, well, people see, what they see. It's their own imagination and so on. But the artist, if they want the person to get the idea of what they see, I'm just kind of grammar here, but how do you get all these fit together? Of what the person
Well, if it's my intention as the artist to hope or want the viewer to see what I intended when I made it, then I would have to do something different. Because that's not going to do it. So that becomes, that does not communicate what I was experiencing or wanting for myself while making this. So if I wanted you to know what I intended, I would have to do a different painting. I would have to make it more specific, and it would have to be more logical. So some artists, some graphic artists do that that's what they do. They're more graphic and they're trying to communicate something specific, especially for advertising. It's boom, 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 put these together and it means this. And then it sells. So this doesn't sell the ideas that I had, and it leaves it open for your interpretation. Now, I don't know if it works for anybody else to be left with this as what they're looking at and what does it mean. Does that bother you to not know what that means?
A little bit.
Okay.
Because when I go to modern art museum, I'm interpreting something and I'm always saying, well, I wonder what the artist meant here. And, I agree with this gentleman, without your explanation, I never would have seen the eagle with the diamond putting it through the gear.
But I often, like Maggie, think, what is the artist saying? But then I also like the freedom to have my own imagination, bring my own interpretation to this. Then it would be fun to meet the artist and see how far apart or how close you are.
Even as a nurse, I wouldn't interpret that. I really wouldn't. I mean, it's just, I'm looking at artwork to incorporate some calligraphy. And I can see it in some other pictures, but I can't interpret that as a medical person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's your way of thinking, and how does your family interpret your paintings? Do they interpret it like you do?
Oh, no. No.
I had a question.
Okay, I saw your hand first.
I was just thinking that doesn't it depend on what you're painting? If you're painting to express yourself, period, or are you painting to communicate with the outside? It seems to me that would make a difference how you do painting.
Right. You know, Frida Kahlo was one of the first painters to express herself emotionally through painting. She was not famous, she was not well liked. Her paintings were disturbing to many, but she gave herself the freedom to do that. And some of them were cryptic, not to be understood necessarily by others, not that she should be understood by others by looking at her painting. But Frida Kahlo was one of the painters who actually broke through painting as a more representational form of art.
But in the medical aspect, there's so many things going on in medicine that I would hope to see something more involved and more questionable and more involved, because I did post-op neurosurgery, did regular surgery, and I just would want more medical involved correction. I mean, so that everybody could understand.
Yeah, I mean, it would make more sense for sure if that had logically been followed in the way that you know, but it's not a logical representation of an event that's medical. It doesn't stop there. You hit your hand.
Yeah, I worked in medical, a lot of hospitals in DC, just as a medical secretary, but I think your artwork is fantastic. I think you're expressing yourself, and I think you have to really look at it, and I think as you described it, it makes a lot of sense. And art is, everybody expresses their own way in art, and I think you're very artistic. I think you have to look at, I think with these artworks, you have to look a little bit more, but that's the idea of art, expression yourself.
And when you leave, when you're done looking, you might walk away still not knowing.
No, or you may.
Or you may have
figured something.
You may have figured something out for yourself.
Yeah.
Kathy?
I wanted to ask you, would you call this some type of art? Like, it's not really abstract expressionism, is it? Or is it in
No.
some way? Or it reminds me a tiny, tiny bit of like Salvador Dali, you know?
Yeah, it has those elements of surrealism, for sure. But I didn't think of it that way when I was painting it. But yes, there are elements of surrealism where things come together in ways that aren't logical, and they don't happen in our world the way we see them. But then once they connect, they almost become symbolic of something else when they show up. Like Dali's pictures, the melting clock on the table, and
Would you think of that, like, from this particular piece, that these connect in some way to communicate something?
well, they are there to communicate something. That's why they're in the picture together. And
Need to communicate something to someone other than yourself.
right. All right, yes, and so I'm trying to see if I can focus this better. But I guess not. Yeah, everything there is there for a reason. To communicate there's even, you can't see this, but inside that crow, there is a picture of two men operating a machine, like in the belly of a ship. So they're propelling, these two men inside the crow are actually propelling the crow forward. And the crow is carrying the diamond. And the diamond has to go through the gear hole. So there's all these parts of mechanisms and effort and These things have to all happen for it to be successful. So this is my wish for myself as I faced surgery. So that's why everything in there matters. But it's for me. It's for me. Pascal?
What I think is that everything in this painting is leading to the notion of cyborg.
Of what?
Of cyborg. Which
Cyborg.
is a means of living being, including working with a mechanism. The bird is no more a free bird. He is moving only because there is a mechanism inside. The wing behind is a drawing copied from a drawing of Leonardo da Vinci.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way for nourishing. Of course, the wall, blue thing, is mechanical. So everything is creating a relation between body and mechanism. And of course, the surgery is relating to a prosthesis. It's clear, and it shows. So I think that in spite of the complexity and the cryptic side of this painting, if you sum up the different elements, you can see the feeling that he wants to express. I was myself, now I will be a cyborg. And it's a strong thing to feel. And I think that that's what it wants to express.
Yeah, the mechanism needs to be successful. If the mechanism fails, I fail.
Yeah.
You know, we are so
It's a lot
vulnerable.
of yourself.
So this is actually the painting of vulnerability and decision-making and hope all coming together. But here I am. It worked.
Deborah,
Yeah.
could you explain the bottom half of the picture? You have the hand there, and I can't see it.
Yeah, this is a gloved surgeon's hand, and this is, and I don't know the name of this instrument because I can't remember, but it's measuring. It's a measuring instrument. It's used in sculpture as well to measure the distance between two things, and then you can recreate that in another form. So I don't know the name of that instrument.
It is to report the measure from
Yeah.
something to something else.
Yeah. So and this is really supposed to be, this is the gloved hand. So it's not my hand. It's not the hand of the female in the picture. But the other hand could be the hand of the female. So she's involved in her own future. She's involved in the success of this surgery. She's part of it. So that's why there aren't two gloved surgical hands. There's one hand is the hand of the vulnerable female. Yes.
Yeah, so things like this leads to creativity of one's mind, which can be an extraordinary helpful thing to a person. You can make him think of things he hasn't thought about before, put things together in a way he's not used to doing that. Without worrying about what the artist thinks. So it's, get rid of the artist. You see something in nature, different people interpret what they're seeing in different ways. And there's no artist except to say, well, what did the universe mean by this?
Yes.
I think an interesting thing or useful thing would be if you have a group and they're shown a picture like this, and they're asked to discuss what they think it is. And
Right, that would be interesting. I hope to do, if we can stick around after we have a snack, that we could actually play a game where we could explore that exact same concept that you're talking about. The simplest version of that is looking at clouds, and
Yeah.
people see different things. They're looking at the same cloud. Okay, I'm just gonna, we only have about, 15 minutes max, so I think I'll just move through these.
Okay.
It's another example of being fascinated by logs, freshly cut, and two different perspectives of those logs, and then wanting to do something with it myself artistically. These trees show up in my work often. And here's a new series, Forest Floor. I'm always taking pictures and I'm looking at nature up, down, sideways, and around. Fascinated by moss and rocks and leaves, and then at the bottom, if you're walking on a path where rain has freshly moved sticks and stones into compositions, I thought, well, what if I could just be down there with it? So I started making paintings on the ground, in the woods, in the leaves, just painting what's in front of me. So I often took paper out and sat on the ground to work, even to build. So this composition, it's not a good picture, but this composition is made from taking an old framed picture onto the ground in the woods and picking up objects and composing something, and trying to stay true to the colors that are found in the earth there. And I continued with this in a lot of different forms. This is just one example of, it's a combination of printmaking. You can see the lines of, the lines I printed from a carved piece of wood to get the wood grain. And then on top of the printing, there's painting, there's a collage of that moss you saw in another photo, there's a leaf, there's another stick, there's a slice of wood, there's actually a piece of wood. The Y stick is actually a branch. So all of that is now in the composition. Some of my work comes from dreams. I had a dream about what is called the perfect stone. And that's a photograph of the perfect stone. I printed the photograph on canvas, sewed it onto a larger piece of canvas, and it's sliced at the top and gold leaf is coming out. And there's some drawing around it. That perfect stone was in my work for quite a long time. Probably took 100 photographs from different perspectives. So there are some of the perfect stone perspectives, and they have characteristics. This one is shy, this one is uncomfortable, this one is situated, this one is honest. So I looked at the pictures and I noticed that each one was different, so I gave them each a different characteristic.
Can you blow that up, that top photo?
I don't think I can. I don't know how to do it. I'm on a PowerPoint. I'd have to go back in and grab the photo and then show it, which I could do at the end. So at the bottom, that's the perfect stone again. And it's the same stone with that same stone inside, filled with stones. And all of these contour lines were traced onto the picture from projections of the different stone pictures I had taken. And I mean, there it is again. And in this case, I cut out the picture of the stone, and I took the stencil outside and put it down on the ground. Because, I mean, again, it was another one of these serendipitous moments where something that you think is garbage, which is the stencil from a cutout. I was just going to use stone in a collage, throw the stencil away. The stencil all of a sudden had a purpose of its own, which was to reveal and capture something behind it. So that became part of the art. And this is the last slide. This is also from a dream. And it's from listening to an interview with Maddow. What's her first name?
Rachel.
Rachel Maddow. I was listening to an interview with Rachel Maddow, and at one point she was talking about what do we need as a society? Like, what's wrong? What can we do? And she was saying we need to really think of ourselves as intertwined, interconnected. And then she said, like plaid. So that night I dreamt about plaid, and I was seeing plaid just through this whole dream, and I was being told, paint plaid. So the next morning I got up and on a very large canvas, painted the entire canvas plaid, the whole thing, plaid. And I didn't know where it was going to go. And after a while I had to put it away for actually a few months, and came back to it. But it's very large, and there's those trees again. These trees keep showing up in different places. But I kind of think of this as the Candyland climate change picture, because it's all pink and, pink smoke and pink kisses in the clouds, and it's very playful, but it's also beckoning. It's kind of a doomed picture, but it's all playful. All right, this is where we pretty much started as my pure example of this moment that I was talking about. And this is the moment that many of us experience, where suddenly something makes sense, or something we weren't expecting happens, and we see it for the first time. We see something in a new way. I was thinking about different scientists, inventors, like Velcro. Do you know where Velcro came from? Yeah. So Velcro came from one man, a hunter, who was out hunting, and noticed when he came home that he had the cockleburs stuck all over his pants. I forget which plant they're from, but...
Thistles.
Thistles, okay. And then there's another one, and they're round. Well, anyway, I used to know what that was. He came home with them, and he also had magnifying glass, so he began out of curiosity. It always requires curiosity if you're going to see something in a new way. He found that each of the little birds had hooks. They had multiple hooks all over them. And he could see that very well through a magnifying glass, and then again through a microscope. And he gave him the idea that, we can use this as a fastener. If it hooks onto the fibers of pants, it can hook onto another fiber, a man-made fiber, and we can make these hooks. We can fabricate them. So he did, and he invented Velcro, which now we just take for granted. But Post-it notes happened the same way. When somebody in a laboratory was trying to create an adhesive, and that adhesive was a weak adhesive. It was discarded, but somebody else in the laboratory used it to make bookmarks in the hymnals in church, bookmarks that were removable. So that's how Post-its happened. But the point is that you need to be there. You need to pay attention. You need to be curious, and then we begin to see things. But we all have these experiences, whether we're artists, writers, scientists, poets. We all have these experiences in life that are sometimes pivotal, where two things come together and we change our minds, or we have a new direction as a result. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you for coming.